Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Basscast Radio. I'm your host, Brian Carter. And guys, the team is back tonight. Got Bass Geek, if you guys watch on YouTube, up in the left-hand corner. Thomas Aaron's of Fishing the DMV down the bottom left-hand corner. And guys, tonight we got a special guest. This guy needs no announcement whatsoever. You guys love him, you hate him, but he's 95%. Actually, I think you're more than that, 99% right on all your predictions for the most part. We got brother Slick Johnson from the, here goes, Alabama Bass Council. I think I almost got it down pat there.
You got it close.
Got it close. So, guys, appreciate you guys all tuning in and checking out. Before I get started, I want to talk to you guys about Before the First Cast. It's our Friday podcast. You guys have all seen the announcement. We now upload on Monday mornings and Friday mornings. And Before the First Cast was always I always want to be a Friday podcast. Just a little quickie to talk before the weekend began, give you guys some news, some information. Calvin Herndon is running that show, and he is doing an amazing job. And you guys make sure you tune in and listen. Also, this podcast is available Saturday and Sunday mornings down in Florida on Dockside Live. You guys can listen there. Grove Street Radio as well, right here in Bedford, Virginia. And last but not least, American Angler Outdoors. You guys can watch there. I was told today the channels have all been updated. There's a new app. There's a new website. So there's a lot. Alvin is working pretty daggone hard on this project, and he's doing a great job. So make sure you guys tune in there. But guys, real quick before we jump into tonight's show, what's been going on in Geeks World?
The same old stuff, man. We're just always grinding, trying to pump out some content on the YouTube, as always.
Thomas, give us a heads up. What Thomas got Slick, if you don't know, Thomas has 12 podcast shows a week and does an excellent job at all 12 of them.
Getting the nonprofit going, casting for conservation so we can supplementally stock our local fisheries. That's been going on. We just debuted our online tournament in October for all Patreon supporters.
Yeah, I saw that.
I had a Black Bass Advisory Board meeting for Maryland. They're talking about some potential new tournament regulations for the tidal Potomac River starting next year. I'll know more about that on October 6th when I meet with the DWR again. So it has been a crazy league. And I had Chaz on last night for a live stream talking about that big $10,000 tournament on the James River, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see the guys from Elite 70s and all win that event. So that was pretty freaking cool. And two great young men right there winning that. Guys, you have all seen and heard, hopefully, and I know probably Slick's even seen it. We had a incident up here on Claytor Lake over the weekend. I mean, it made it to Bass Talk Live. Want to thank Matt for the shout out and the read, and it actually made it to the Bass Boat Central Forum. We had a punch thrown, and angler fallen, and charges placed, and accusations made of cheating, of bringing fish from another lake. So it's Slick is something we're not really used to up here. I mean, I saw someone post something about the whole act is like, man, that was a normal tournament in like the 90s. I mean, if it wasn't a fight, it wasn't a tournament. But now it's a little different. We try to keep everything calm. And guys, I was blown away. I mean, I actually saw when he hit the ground. I'll be honest with you guys. I had just taken the guy's photo. He ran, dumped him, come around the corner. Someone got in his face. And then, I can't, he was hit, pushed, knocked to the ground. I mean, it's two old guys fighting.
So were you just reacting to this like Joe Rogan at an MMA fight? Just like, oh my God.
Like, oh!
I gotta ask, what do you consider an old guy?
Yeah.
Both of these were retired gentlemen. I'm the same age as you, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 50. So yeah.
We're all around. You're 51. I'm 51, and Thomas is maybe 35.
Yeah, I'm a baby.
He's the baby. So these were both two retired gentlemen that had this incident went down.
I guess my thought is, like, so Claytor Lake for us up here is like the Ohio River. Why would you That would be the weirdest place to do this because it's going to get clicked if you come in with like 20-pound bag and everyone else has 4, it's like something's a little squirrely here. Like it's just a weird place to do it.
I mean, well,
Yeah,
the tournament itself is put on at Claytor Lake because it is a 94.9 Star Country event, which is our local, one of our big country music channels. Brett runs the event, Brett Sharp, the announcer, and that's his home lake because that's where he lives. So that's why it's kind of been hosted in his own backyard. He's got a house on the lake or something like that's why it's been hosted there. But even John Cruz, if you listen to BTL, John Cruz said 18 pounds, there's no way in hell.
Exactly. It's like,
no
if
way
you're a criminal, you're
it's
retarded
like
for doing that.
It's like the lake that I fished this past week. Last Saturday it took 12 pounds, like 1241 to win their night tournament. I had 12 pounds during the day. But if I was going to cheat, I wasn't going to bring in a 20-pound bag. I mean,
well, the guy in Alabama, I did a live a couple of weeks ago with the actual polygraph guy from the Polygraph Examination Board in the state of Alabama. And the guy from Alabama that got accused and failed 2 polygraphs, he got off on a technicality because the polygraph examiners didn't follow protocol.
Okay.
But the same thing was happening at Smith Lake, coming in with giant largemouth and winning with more weight than what what it should take. And we all try to think about, why would somebody cheat? Why would they do it like this? Why would they do it like that? We can't think like a cheater. So we can't process what they're thinking. And, I'm doing a thing with Field and Stream tomorrow night. And it's funny y'all brought this up because Field and Stream just come out with an article today of the 7 most interesting cheating scandals in fishing. And not all of them are bass fishing. Yeah. But I thought, if we were going to write about cheating scandals, we wouldn't have enough paper. But we can't think like they do. You can't think like a cheater does. And obviously, if they're thinking about cheating, they don't think about like the normal things we would. I just can't. I guess it's for the clout.
Yeah.
I don't think it's for the money. I really don't.
This was a giant purse, guys. This event, they cap it at 140 boats. And it's not a very big lake, so about a little bit bigger than the Leesville Lake, a little pond we got up here because it goes from Smith to Leesville to Bugs to Gaston. It's how it kind of flows up here. And it wasn't a very big lake, so they cap it at 140, but they do give away a $10,000 prize to the winner. So did he need the money? I don't know. I can't say he cheated personally. I don't know. I'm going to tell that straight up right off the bat. I don't know if all I heard was there's no way in hell those fish came from this lake. They're too green and they're too damn big. And for someone to catch that size at that time.
At what point are these other organizations going to start thinking like what Bass does, where you have to have a GoPro running or something? At what point, when cheating, if it becomes more of a problem, you just go get the GoPro? Everyone has a dash cam in their car now. And if I'm a tournament director and I'm dropping $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, what is it? Yeah, get a GoPro or you can't fish, because it would be suspicious if it turns off every time you catch one.
Well, we did that. The Alabama Bass Trail did that. Several years. I don't even know if y'all know about this cheating scandal, and I'm not saying they were cheating. Several years ago, John Canada and Bo Hunter were fishing the Alabama Bass Trail. They were tied for the lead in the points with 2 other people. So they put GoPros in their boat. Well, let me rephrase that. They had a camera boat all day.
Okay.
Camera boat leaves at like noon, goes on in, weigh-ins at like 2. So they put GoPros in both of the boats of the 2 points leaders. At the time, John Canada and Bo Hunter don't have any fish. Dustin Cannell is fishing that day, just fishing. He goes to pull out of a boat ramp, and Bo Hunter's boat's there. Why is his boat in the parking lot? Goes and looks, aerator's running.
Oh.
Full of fish. Okay. Now, they say, well, we forgot those fish were in there. We were going to throw them back. So Dustin Cannell calls. Okay, let me back up. It was a different tournament in which the fish were in the boat. In the Alabama Bass Trail, they end up coming in and having a big bag after not having any when the camera boat leaked. The GoPro, they said the batteries died. No footage. Okay.
In 2 hours? No way.
Then in a separate tournament, that's when Dustin Cannell found the fish in the boat, called the tournament director, and they said, "Hey, we went and threw those fish back." So when they went to look at the boat, there was no fish in there. John Canada and Bo Hunter said, "Oh, we remembered it, and we went up there and threw them back." Okay, so 2 separate incidents. 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could not say John Canada or Bo Hunter is a cheater. I can't say that. But if you know, the evidence kind of points that way, you know. Unfortunately, in bass fishing, the only thing we have to go by is a polygraph test.
Yep.
And not a lot of people believe that that's accurate.
Yeah, I'd like to actually ask you about that because, you know, they're not submissible in court.
They are.
I mean, how do you feel about that?
So that was one of the questions I asked the polygraph board guy.
Yeah.
So they are admissible in all federal cases,
Okay.
but we always hear that they're not admissible in court. That's the number one thing on my videos. They're admissible if the defense and the prosecution agrees to it. But here's where this is where he told me polygraphs come into play for court. He said most of the time it's decided before. They'll give them a polygraph. They'll agree to a polygraph, but they'll say, hey, it can't be used in court. Okay. So they'll go take the polygraph, and once they fail it, most of the time then they'll admit or they'll plead out, and we never hear. We never hear.
Yeah.
And so this guy I talked to, he makes a living doing it for court. And everybody says, well, it don't work in court. Well, it's not admissible unless both attorneys agree, but it is admissible in all federal court cases.
Wow.
Okay. That's good info right there.
Yeah. But I learned a lot about how a polygraph has to be given. There's certain procedures and what kind of questions you can ask. And it's very detailed. And if a man gave me a polygraph right now and he didn't do it right, I would know, because that man showed me everything. And what had happened in this particular case in Alabama, so they have what they call control questions, and then they have neutral questions. Well, you can only ask, and I'll get this wrong, but you can only ask like 2 control questions, and then you have to ask a neutral. And so what happens is if a polygraph examiner is not complete, you know, if he's not licensed or doesn't know exactly, and he asks you 3 controlled questions, and then he asks you a neutral question, and then all those results in Alabama have to be kept forever. And so then if you go back and protest your polygraph, and they have to send it to the polygraph board, and if the polygraph board goes, well, you messed up right here, the polygraph's thrown out.
Wow. Even
if you failed the question, because what he said, well, I can't say he failed the question because they didn't ask it right. He said, if it's asked right, then it's 97% accurate. He said, but if it's not asked right, it's not.
Quite interesting there. I was actually told, and this is hearsay, guys, that he refused a polygraph test. And we don't know, you know, our local polygrapher wasn't at, if I remember correctly, the last event or the event before that he fished, because he had passed away, which is unfortunate. And there wasn't a polygraph. So a lot of people were like thinking, well, he might have just went ahead and said, hey, they probably won't have a polygrapher. And we had the tournament director had one come in from DC. I mean, because we don't really have many around here. They either come from North Carolina or DC to do polygraphs. So it's an interesting thing. Hopefully it's one of those things that we will never, ever see again. But hey, it can always happen. I've actually seen two fights on Claytor Lake. One was about 15 years ago, and one was last weekend. We had a gentleman that did our lake report for years on the basscast.com, and he was run over coming in by some anglers who are still on plane in a no wake, and they run over the back of his boat.
Holy cow.
And they injured this gentleman, and he was already 50 by then, and he never recovered after many surgeries, and it eventually was his demise years later down the road as he got older. So I don't know what it is in the water in the mountains, but
when we're talking about all these cheating scandals, and yet when MLF was first created, and again, I bash them all the time, but it was like, well, you can't do catch, weight, release because how do you stop cheating? But it's like, well, we haven't even figured it out with this format to begin with, and it comes down to this. Cheaters will cheat. People will commit murder. You can't stop that. I think the biggest thing with these organizations is like, if you catch somebody, you gotta bring the hammer down with punishments. And it's not like we just do it quietly. You never hear about them. You make an example. You go full force on it, because that's the only way that maybe in the future you can prevent it from happening.
I agree. But that's what happens in bass and MLF.
Yeah.
They don't want to ruin an angler's career. And so they kind of want to keep it hidden or give a slap on the wrist. Well, my thought is, if you do it at the professional level, then you should not be allowed to fish, because here's the facts. If you fail a polygraph test in Alabama in a tournament, most of our tournaments say that if you failed a polygraph test, you can't fish our tournament.
Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're done.
So why should you be able to do it at the professional level? And don't get me wrong, the Cayuga thing, let me go and say that was Daniel Fennell's fault. That was MLF's fault. Okay. Mm-hmm. He muddied the waters and told them, well, if you're not looking at it per se, it's okay. He muddied the waters there. Now, he didn't muddy the waters for Spencer Sheffield. Okay. Mm-hmm. There wasn't nothing muddy there. What Matt Becker did, everybody thinks I can't stand Matt Becker. Look, I respect Matt Becker so much, because let me tell you what he did. After that event, he called several anglers and he said, listen, I want to get up in front of everybody at the next event and apologize for what I did. I want to tell that I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. He sends the email to MLF. And he is told before he walks through the door, you keep your freaking mouth shut. We're going to take care of this. Don't say a word. And so they didn't want the backlash. And this guy's trying to go and do the respectable thing. Wow. And then there's all this talk about it. And guess what? He wins Angler of the Year. Mm-hmm. And all they had to do, what upsets me about that, I don't remember if Alton Jr. or Jacob Wheeler was second. One of them was second. I think it was Jacob Wheeler.
It was.
And you can say what you want about Jacob Wheeler, but if he wins that, like he should have, because Matt Becker would have been in the top 10.
Yep.
The dude's got 4 in a row. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. And so he got into the top 10 because of doing something he shouldn't have done, and that cost somebody some money.
Mm-hmm. But we've also heard about in Major League Fishing, the penalty, like you were talking about earlier, a $5,000 fine, no information rule. Oh, we violated. We're just going to fine you and let it go.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've heard a lot of under the table stuff, because in Thomas and I've talked about it, they didn't want to ruin their brand, and that's what it is. You don't want to hurt. I mean, it's like, you got 5 players on a basketball team. 2 are freaking famous. The other 3 are just there. You don't want to ruin the 2. You know what I'm saying?
And that's sports. I mean, we get it. We're not naive here. Just in it, like this, if it was the NFL or whatever, Tom Brady's going to get special treatment for better or worse because of where he is in the hierarchy. And again, I like the idea of fines, but then when you put a fine up there, it's like, well, is the juice worth the squeeze with the fine? Then you create that whole complete shit show. Yeah.
But then you've got the argument, technically, you qualify for the elites or the MLF.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a pay to play, system. So is a fine fair? I mean, you're already paying, tens of thousands of dollars. So or should it be more points, or should it be, you can't fish half this tournament? What do you think?
I think
Yeah.
it'd be, here's what I think, and this is just my opinion, okay? And obviously I'm biased because Jordan Lee's one of my best friends. I know how particular he is about finding his own fish, not getting information. He could have anything he wanted of mine on Wheeler. He has everything. He deleted all those waypoints because he didn't want anybody saying anything. Okay. When they were at Cayuga, I talked to Jordan before every tournament. I talked to him every day. He told me the night before, he said, Slick, I don't think anybody's thought about going and catching largemouth. He said, I'm going to go up on day one and catch largemouth, and then I'll go down on day two. He said, I can either catch a big bag or I at least have a decent day, and then I can catch up on day two. It never crossed his mind, ever. And I'm not just saying him, a bunch of people, to catch the same fish twice. But not only that, with all the information stuff that's went on this year in BASS, when you've got people that think that they're out there following the rules, they're on the up and up, and somebody else is out there breaking rules. If you're going to break the rule, everybody makes mistakes. If us four people were judged for our worst mistake of our life, we're all a piece of shit, we're all going to hell, okay?
Amen.
So I'm not bashing anybody for one mistake. I don't think you should be banned for one mistake. But you get a whooping for that first one. But if you do something a second time, you're gone.
Because I think there's something. This is why you have first degree, second degree murder, or manslaughter charges, because there's degrees of it. I think maybe the information rule is different than if you put lead in a bass and take it into the weigh-in. And I think that's where they need to kind of create this scaling of what we consider egregious to the point that we should ban you outright versus the fine. When it comes to no information from an organization, how in the hell do you reinforce this? It is such a vague, wishy-washy thing. It's just impossible, I think, to enforce it. Now, I think the utopian concept of it is great, but there's always going to be someone you can nail for it. Why not just say, we're going to be done with it, just get whatever you want because it's cleaner for us? And I'm just thinking from their mindset.
And because I've asked that question, because Swindle and I talked about it one day. Well, why don't we just do it like the Opens and say you get 1 month, you can't get information. Rest of the time you can talk to whoever. But that takes away from being a professional. If you're a professional, you're supposed to go find your own fish. You're supposed to do it on your own. And so if we open the floodgates and say just do whatever, then we don't know who's good or who's not. It comes down to who got the best information, who's got the most money to buy information. And so I've said the same thing you did. I wanted them to just have a free for all. That's what I thought was the best solution, what you said. And the anglers don't want that. Well, the honest anglers don't want that. The problem is that when you put a rule in place about information or anything, it only hurts the honest angler because look, here's the way the rule reads, you can still get around it. Okay, there was an angler, and I'm not going to say his name because I would get crucified. This angler back in the day, if I say too much, you'll know who I'm talking about. So there was people that would fish before the event. They would put it on a website. And let's just say you named this website WXO99W, okay? He knew the website. He could go to the website, watch the videos, get the waypoints, get all the information. It was public. That website was public. Okay, but guess what? Nobody knew what that website was. So legally, by the rules, he got information from a public website. Now, he got busted on it. Somebody found out about it, and it got washed away. Because if you knew who this guy was, you would say, well, first of all, nobody would believe it, but it happened. Okay. And so there's ways to get around the whole information rule. And so it only hurts the honest guy.
Which is why I feel like the libertarian argument is still strong with me of just if you can't control it, try not to, and then it kind of takes away their advantage a little bit. I mean, I get it, like perfect world, I do. You're right though, because whatever boundary you put up, people are going to figure out a way to bob and weave it. And even in that person was probably like, "Well, I didn't break a rule." It's like, no, but you put a lot of energy in trying to figure out how not to.
Let me tell y'all that y'all may know who this angler is, and I'm not going to say his name because he's a friend of mine. FLW put in this rule several years ago. So let me tell you what he used to do. FLW had a rule that says that you could only get information from people that were registered for the tournament.
Right. Yep.
So here's what he would do. And I'll give you for example. Let's say they were coming to Wheeler. Okay. The co-angler side's full, got a waiting list. Well, let's say he wanted information from me. Slick, go register as a co-angler. You're going to be put on a waiting list, but because you're registered, I can get all your information.
Wow.
And so he would do that. He would wait till the tournament got full, get somebody to register that was a stick on that lake, and he could get all their information. Okay. So people caught on to it.
Yeah.
And they created a rule that said you had to be in the tournament. You couldn't be on a waiting list. And so they changed that. Man, there's so much.
Is that breaking a rule, or is that just the people that made the rules made a terrible rule and didn't make it? I don't know. Like, I get, like, if you break the rule, I 100% agree, just throw them at the stakes. But if you didn't, and somebody made a rule with a massive hole and you rubbed your brain synapses together, like, I'll just do this thing, it's legal.
There's a fine line between being unethical. And so let's talk about the Opens guys from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the last event, JT and Trey, there was no way they couldn't make the elites. They were in before we went to Harris Chain. Mm-hmm. So JT and Trey could get information from anybody on all the lakes they were going to, but they knew they were going to make the elites. All right. So that was legal. Mm-hmm. Was it ethical?
Yeah. That's a huge loophole.
Yeah. JT came to me before Harris Chain and he brought his boat. And I said, "Oh, no. Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to Smith Lake." "No, you can't." So I had him to call Lisa. Lisa said, "Yeah, it's fine." I said, "Oh, it may be fine, but you don't need to do that." So there's a fine line between ethical and legal. And listen, if you go over to this prison, there's a prison about 2 miles from my house. If you go over there, every person in there can justify why they're in there. Well, I shot my wife because she was cheating on me, or I killed my husband because he was beating me. You can justify anything, but that doesn't make it right.
No, I agree. And the thing is, everyone's playing by their own ethics, but we all need to play by the same rules, which means the tournament directors need to do a better job of getting all the unwritten rules out of there. So it's not based on an ethical decision, but a black and white rule. Because even in baseball, you see this. Well, I threw at the guy's head because that's what you're supposed to do. He's like, yeah, but you're throwing 110 now. You could murder someone. That's fine when it was World War II and everyone was throwing like 20 miles an hour, but we can't do this unwritten rule anymore. And so I just, again, like, I'm not trying to stand up for all these people, but I also want to put it to Bass MLF. Just do better with making these rules. You have all the money there. You can hire these things called lawyers to look over them and make sure it's like, oh, could they do this and this? And I think it could just make a lot of this drama go away.
I hope they already hired lawyers.
Yeah.
It's hard to make everything in fishing black and white, though.
Yeah, it is.
Let me ask you, if we start trying to put a penalty to all the things we think could happen, okay? What's the penalty for hooking a fish outside the mouth on bed and keeping it? Is that the same penalty as culling a dead fish? Is that the same penalty as running a no-wake zone? Is that the same penalty as not having your kill switch hooked up and just not realizing it? Is that the same penalty for not hooking your life jacket up? So there's so many things, and how do you put it in black and white?
But I do agree, like you just said, there are multiple flavors of what breaking the rules are, but it doesn't mean you're a cheater.
That's right.
I think that's what's important to bring out to the public. Like if someone says like, well, they cheated, it's like, well, that's kind of broad. Did they cheat, or did they okay, they hooked the fish outside the mouth?
Yeah.
He wasn't getting information, or he wasn't stuffing weights in a fish. Okay, he made a mistake. Or like when Polinick culled across state lines on the Mississippi, was he trying to maliciously do something? Was the intent malicious? And I think that's where they could do a better job. So you're not putting all this hate to someone that maybe doesn't deserve it.
No, I agree with that. And for some reason, this year, the rookies making a mistake considered cheating.
Fire.
Yeah.
What did you, Slick? What'd you?
And you're talking about kids too. I mean, come on, these kids are gonna, they're kids. They're going to have mind lapses.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when the coaching issue came out, that someone, that he had a coach, and we're all trying to figure out what type of coach, and it wasn't a strength coach. I mean,
are you talking about Trey?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to throw it out there, but yeah.
Yeah. So here's the first thing I want to say about Trey. I took up for him at Lake Fork. Because the kid won, and man, he got crucified, got waypoints and all this crap. Here's what I'll say, and I'm going to say a lot of good stuff about him first. I don't care how many waypoints somebody gets. I don't care how much information you get. It really ain't worth a whole lot because conditions change, everything changes, and realistically, who's giving him information? KVD? Yeah. Because now, do I think information helps? Yes, I do, but I think he would have been successful no matter what. Okay, agreed. I'm saying that Trey McKinney is one of the greatest young anglers of our time. Now, is that we can get into the whole Livescope debate? Okay.
No.
Nope, we're not.
Not again.
But
nope.
Here's the thing. There was a lot of questions about him getting information. Rick Cheatham did not do him any favors by going to different events. Like he came to an FLW event at Smith, and he was asking questions about where people caught them, how they catch them, and it's a couple of weeks before the league get there. I don't care. That didn't make him be successful. You still got to go catch them.
Yep.
And so, do I think Trey made a lot of mistakes? Absolutely. But I talked to Trey, and if you ask me how I feel about him, I don't know about the information. I know this. I called him on everything I got called about, and I promise you that was a lot of hours on the phone. Every time somebody questioned him, I called, and he had an answer for it. But I did get a phone call from somebody close to him, and this is what they told me. And this part right here will probably go viral because I've never told anybody about it. Somebody that was close to Trey called me one night, and he said, these people are accusing him of getting information. He doesn't get information from other people. He said the only person that gives him information is Rick Cheatham. He ain't supposed to give him information. And the guy didn't believe me when I told him that was against the rules. And so I asked Trey about that conversation. And Trey told me that Rick did not give him information. So it becomes who do you want to believe? And the people that don't want to, that think Trey gets information are going to always think that. And the people that think that Trey's honest are always going to think that. He passed polygraphs, but Bass's polygraph, listen, just like with Corey Johnston, okay? They didn't, when he hooked that fish outside the mouth, he was asked, did you intentionally do it? Doesn't matter if you intentionally do it. If you were visibly sight fishing and you hook that fish outside the mouth, it has to be thrown back, period. But Bass manipulated the questions so that he would pass the polygraph. So I don't trust BASS's polygraphs at all. And they didn't do themselves any favors when JT failed the polygraph. And you got the guy that's got if you go on his website, and he may have changed it by now, but it said cheapest polygraphs in New York, starting at $99.99. Okay.
Wow.
The guy had charges against him.
Wow.
The guy had been let go from the police department because of lying, and the guy had no license. And so he could have given the most accurate polygraph ever. But how does BASS not go do their due diligence when they're hiring a polygraph examiner? So now you got JT Tompkins that failed a polygraph that can come back and go, well, wait a minute, look at the guy that gave it to me.
Yeah.
So, that's Bass's fault. You're supposed to be the biggest organization in fishing.
Yeah.
And you hired the guy at the Dollar Tree to do a polygraph?
What a season it has been for 2024 in the bass fishing world. I thought 2023, after the Keith Poche stuff and, after all that stuff went down, I said, no way 2024 could be like this. And it's been a wrecking ball for both divisions. The only one that's come out good is the NPFL out of all of this. And we saw you coming back from an NPFL. You shot one of your videos and talking about the organization. And we've had many guests on the show from the organization. And, for 5 or 6 people that run it, I mean, I love it. I'm kind of upset it got canceled. I understand it's a hurricane coming through this weekend, but I love the NPFL.
So the NPFL, this is how I feel about them. This is my opinion. I feel like they do care about the anglers. I know they have to make money, but I feel like yesterday when they canceled the event. Okay, first of all, let me say I was the first one to say great decision. NPFL always makes the right decisions, it seems like, and that's great. Well, NPFL didn't make that decision. Okay, they had told everybody you're fishing no matter what. Don't care what you say, you're fishing. The city made that decision. The city came out. Okay, but for the anglers, the NPFL, to me, it seems like they always make the right decisions. I think they're great people. I think it's a great league, and I think it's a great opportunity for people that, don't have the money to go qualify, because here's the facts of the matter. If you're going to go qualify in the opens or the invitationals, you got to spend a fortune to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, just pay your money and see if you're good enough to fish. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I've said things about I don't consider them a professional league because there's no qualifications to get there.
I agree.
But I think that them banning NPFL just created them a league for qualifications to get there.
They're not a professional league, but I think they're the only one that's professionally run.
That's very good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even when when the big drop of all the information came, them being like, we're going to be the first one out the gate on Monday. We're going to have this run for 48 hours. They came out. It was concise. It was perfect. And then everyone else, it just felt like just a monkey with a hammer, like everything leaking out. And it's like, you guys have been around the longest. How is it this group comes out looking like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you two can't get your stuff together?
Yeah. I agree. That's very well put. That's the first time I've heard somebody say it like that. I feel like they're professionally run. I think those guys do a great job. A couple of people didn't like it when I was down there. They were like, "Well, you said we weren't a professional league." I said, "Well, there is no qualifications.
Right.
I wish there were qualifications to get there." I think it's very top heavy. That's the best way I can say it. But I think we're genius by banning Livescope, because if you think about it,
It's brilliant.
Let's say that, we have 100% of the people that watch tournament fishing.
Mm-hmm.
60% of them are going to always watch bass.
Yep.
50% of them are going to watch MLF. 100% are going to always watch one or the other. There was only about 15% that actually watched MPFL. And I'm making this number up. But once they banned Livescope, because that Livescope debate 50-50, now you just gain 50%. Not only that, you just brought people that don't even watch tournament fishing to go, hey, I want to watch this. Now, is that temporary? Probably is. I don't understand with the banning, the people that you're going to bring into it are people that's not going to be fishing much longer for the most part. And so you're not bringing in new anglers, but I think my thoughts on the Livescope debate. I know we said we're not going to get in it. I think every organization made the right decision to an extent. I wish Bassmaster had the option to go 4 with, 4 without. We'll flip a coin. We'll flip a coin at ICAST and figure out where the 9th one's going to be. I wish they would have done that. But
we talked about that as well, about the schedule and how the schedule is too top heavy towards the forward-facing sonar.
It was, but then kudos to them. I think this is the most, someone can check me on this, the most rivers they've had in a season. They have like 4 rivers. They really tried to make a schedule to hype up the people that don't like to look at screens. So I do give them that.
But kind of going back, the one thing that those older anglers do bring is some pretty good sized followings with them, which will bring those guys over too.
They do. So, I could go talk for 5 hours about the whole bass bubble, and I've gotten a bunch of calls this week of people calling me saying, man, I just lost this deal. Man, I just lost this deal. I talk to a lot of anglers about increasing their social media and getting a following so that they can be seen. I haven't had one angler call me yet that lost a deal that probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I haven't had one angler call me yet that was able to promote their product and they still lost a deal. And so, I don't like the fact that I make as much money as a professional angler because of my following. I don't like that people on social media make more money than some of the anglers. I don't like that. But the anglers have been told for a long time, you got to get your socials up, Jacob Wheeler, Scott Martin, those guys were on the forefront. They went out and hired cameramen. They built up their following, and they're some of the richest people in fishing. Swindle. I told Swindle the other day, I said, you're a heck of a lot better off when you don't catch them than you are when you do. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, when you catch them, you want to go up there and be modest and, oh, yeah, I had a good day, man. Yeah, I hope I can get them tomorrow. I said, but boy, if you don't catch them, there's going to be some funny shit coming. And people are going to remember.
But, I guess a lot of people didn't really, understand the diversification of funds. And that was the whole thing there. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, during COVID, if it wasn't for Basscast Radio, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to make any extra money because we couldn't have any fishing tournaments. Everybody started a podcast show. Every celebrity in the world had one. But I mean, I'll be honest, it was, I had a rough month last month, but I had a bunch of videos on Facebook go viral, and they sent me a nice little check. A really nice check, to be honest.
And we keep blaming other things like, forward-facing center, this for that. How about this is the 2008 crisis all over again. Like, we're in a recession. We're going into one. I know we're not allowed to talk about that, but and because of that, we're blaming other things that are superficial that aren't the problem. Like, forward-facing sonar is not destroying the sport. Might be the stock market that's hurting it. And you're seeing these massive consolidations of corporations. And if you do that and you have every bait company run by one group, you don't need 38 pros on the staff. And all this is happening behind the scenes, and no one's talking about that. And that's the big stuff.
I agree with you. I think it's been a perfect storm with the economy. Like I said, I don't care if you give people 64 transducers. I don't care if you ban it tomorrow. I could care less. But I'm still honest about the facts of the good and the bad about Livescope.
Oh, yeah.
Livescope gives a fast track to some young anglers to stardom. It does. But what I don't like to hear about Livescope is people say, well, so-and-so couldn't catch them without them. You don't know that.
Yeah.
You don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that I can't say is that's not fishing, because who are we to say what real fishing is? I had this argument with a buddy of mine today. He was at the boat ramp and I stopped, and he was complaining about forward-facing sonar. He said, real fishing is going out there and throwing and knowing where they're going to be. I said, well, the livescopers say real fishing is seeing a fish and making it react.
Yeah.
A livescoper says that you're getting lucky. I said, and a livescoper is seeing what he's throwing at and making them bite it. So there's arguments both ways, but it's a fact that live scoping has hurt the hard bait market. I can't deny that. I know everybody knows that. Live scoping has hurt the bait casters. Okay. But let me say this. I say that because of what I see at the professional level, but your average local angler is not live scope. So are they going? Those are the people that's buying. The professionals aren't the one buying. So when somebody makes that argument, I go, I don't know that it ain't just the economy. I can't say.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Geek.
Now, I'll say two things, and I do want your opinion on this, because like I fish South Austin, Cherokee, Watauga. These are my Highlands reservoirs and a couple of little lakes over on the Virginia side. Clater, I've actually fished that lake. But, for us, it really surprised me when it kind of like everybody started to hate on Livescope. Because up here, we've been Damiki rigging, we've been dropping and spooning and catching, smallmouth and largemouth out of 50 to 80 foot for years. And we've been fishing for suspended bass. Like I giggle when I hear people go, suspended bass are the last bastion of unknown. I'm like, you're dumb. We've been doing that for years. Like, we've had to be in an area, fan cast, using the 2D, blah, blah, blah. Right. Just a little background. But, for me, I know, vertical dropping on them, that has become tougher and tougher, the Damiki rig. Those fish get accustomed, whether it be the sonar sound. I think it's the boat pressure, because I've done things with the live scope, even vertical drop, or not the live scope, but the hydro wave vertical dropping, and the bottom of the boat being black, and tested all this stuff. But do you think, number one, we're going to see, because right now, like you said, only 50%, and it's pretty much dead heat.
Yeah.
From a poll I did, there's about 50% of people that are using it. Anglers that are what I would call tournament style, whether they're even fish tournaments, whether they're bass fishing like we like to do, that are using it. But what percentage of those people are any good at it, even at 50%? And as we see that number rise, I know even on the lakes like Chick, like Fort Loudon, like Douglas, we don't see those giant schools of bass out there anymore. And, on Douglas, we used to love the crankbait bite. It's great. And that window gets smaller and smaller, it seems, every single year. As we pressure those bass, which, as Blockhead says, they're out there resting, which I wholeheartedly think is a bunch of garbage. I've never seen bass, resting bass, chase so many shad. We, so, my point is, are they going to become? Because I can tell you, I was sitting at a spot, had a school of 250 largemouth over 155 feet. They were up and down from 15 to 35 feet, just kind of swimming around, chasing some balls of shad. And man, I threw everything at the boat in the boat at them, and I got one bite out of that 250 school. And I'm just estimating. I mean, it might have been more than that. And even had a guy looking at me, and I was like, listen, anybody that says Livescope's cheating, tell them you're watching a guy throw at 250.
Yeah.
I mean, no, what do you think we're going to see?
I'm glad you brought this up because I used to dive for mussels, and that was 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. I saw then where most of the fish lived. Okay. The difference was I didn't know how to go catch them. One thing that Livescope has taught us, and this is the argument I had today, and this goes to what you just said. Only 10% of the bass went to the bank. Okay. Yes. Well, people say, yeah, but they used to go out to the ledges. Yeah, about 20% of them. There was still 80% that suspended. And so when you go to lakes like you're talking about in Smith Lake, where we all fish was a suspended fish. The difference was on the Tennessee River, we don't know where they go. So we have to wait for them to come to a ledge or come to the grass or come to the bank. And so just think about this now. When you're talking about, this is going to give the scopers a good argument, and I don't mean to, but if you know that 80% of the bass or 90% of the bass are out there in the middle and 10% of them are up here in the grass and the bank, what kind of dumbass goes and fishes for 10% of them?
Plus, when the HOA is trying to get rid of all of the grass and the shoreline vegetation till there's nothing left.
Everybody's going to want Livescope after that. My son grew up, I'm not going to say he grew up fishing the right way. I'm going to say he grew up just fishing.
Yeah.
And now he's one of those, really good Livescopers. And here's the thing, because 10%, I'm just throwing these numbers out there, because 10% of the fish go to the bank. I went down to Pickwick last year when he was fishing the tournament. I was on the bank waiting on him. And I'm watching the day before this tournament, all these people practicing. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way at all. But when he come up there to get his food, I said, son, I ain't seen nobody that's got a chance to beat you yet. Because I knew how he was fishing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have a chance because they were throwing at the bank. 90% of the big fish are still out there waiting to come in and spawn. There's a reason we don't catch these 8-pounders all the time, and it's because they're sitting out there wherever, roaming around. And so, it's one of those deals where, we're not seeing as many on the ledges anymore, and we're not catching them on crankbaits anymore out on the ledges. It's not as many, but it's because they got tired of getting hooked. And so now, instead of us having 20% or 25% of the fish to come to a ledge, now we only got 15%. Yeah. Now, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know how Livescope's going to affect that. Will it make them come back? Will it get harder? I don't know. But I am concerned about the environmental aspect of Livescope. If you go and catch 30 pounds out roaming in July that you never would have caught, and those fish are caught deep and some of them die, and I do worry about that, because the problem, when we figure out if that causes an environmental aspect, an effect on them, when we figure it out, it's going to be too late.
Jake Norman of the Texas Department of Wildlife Resources did a 2-year study on this, and so far he said that there's no issue, and there's not a statistical advantage really amongst the mass populace when it comes to using scope. But he did concede that in the 1% you could see that. So I think we're at the very cusp of this. We're talking generationally. I mean, the last big technology boom we had was side scan, but Twitter and Facebook weren't around then to hear people bitch like we do now with the scope.
Yeah.
I think time will tell, because again, I think it does just, if you look at video game demographics on like which generations are great at video games, which generations hate it, it's basically the same thing with scope. And what we're seeing now is with the farm system we have with high school and college, you already have these people that are extremely good athletes, really knowledgeable, and now you're giving them technology that they're already really good at. They're coming out punching hard, and it's scared a lot of people. I think what would be fascinating from a historical fishing perspective is in 10 years, when this old generation of anglers are gone and all you have are these great athletes that know scope, does the field re-level? Because if everyone's good at it, no one's good at it, right? If everyone can hit 95, what is the next step? And maybe it is everyone goes back shallow because everyone forgets how to fish shallow.
Well, you said it, the 1%. And so let me give you an example from this past weekend's BFL 2-day super tournament on Pickwick. There's a kid called Dylan Nutt and one named Bank Shaw. Okay. Both of these kids will be fishing professionally. Okay. They're elite. They are the elite of the elite. Bank Shaw caught the 38-pound bag or whatever on Chickamauga. Mm-hmm. Okay. These kids are super elite. Bank Shaw finished second with 47 pounds. Dylan Nutt finished first with 47.13. Okay. Third place was 33 pounds.
Wow.
So if we take Dylan Nutt and Bank Shaw out of it, nobody's complaining about Livescope. Nobody's fussing. Now, the other people were Livescoping. My kid finished sixth. He was Livescoping. Okay. But we're okay with him catching 33 pounds. That's fine. We feel like we could have caught 33 pounds dragging a jig, but 47? Now it's a problem, and we act like, oh my God, Livescope's killing the industry.
Yeah.
Well, first, it goes back to what you said, the 1%. And so the 1% are so good at it that it has caused a problem. Trey McKinney's so good at it. JT Tompkins, Logan Hart, Rob G, Ben Milliken, all these guys are so good at it. But I'm going to tell you something about Ben Milliken. I don't care if you take Livescope away from him or not. He's still going to be good. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is.
And I just think it'll be interesting with this new schedule. I'm really interested to see with this bass schedule if there's any leveling of the field, because when everyone says going shallow, where are you doing that on the St. Lawrence or Toledo Bend in February? Like, you build these competitions, like you get upset when people are on the same spots in a ledge fishing tournament in June. Then why did you schedule a ledge fishing tournament in June when people would be on top of each other? So, but when you're going to a Lake Champlain, when you're going to a tidal Potomac River, you give the dude that just wants to throw a frog, he could get lucky with 5 bites there and do something. We saw what Seth Fighter did. Will this schedule level the playing field out? If it does, hypothetically does, then that's where Bass MLF needs to really think about how they schedule it, whether they split it up like it was talked about earlier, or just level the field. Because again, when people are complaining about Toledo Bend or Lake Fork in February or St. Lawrence, no kidding, that's going to give you a massive advantage.
Absolutely. And they did a good job with the scheduling, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Geek.
And, going back to, the companies, I mean, I don't know, isn't that just business, though? When things change, you're either the lead dog or left behind. I mean, there's a lot of great companies out there, and I hate to see them hurt, and there's a lot of great people, and the industry is small. But I think the guys who are really using Livescope, who really know, I don't know, I'm kind of excited to see what innovations come out of the things we're learning about fish behavior with the scope. I mean, that goes back to the whole argument. Are you really fishing? Well, or you don't know how to fish because the old school way, because when the truth is, if half the book has been wrong the whole time, I mean, are you really learning anything? Well, I'd like to see the companies really start to And especially like some of the big companies. Look, I get it. I mean, there's some really big names out there, but maybe go to these local guys who are really using Livescope. Who are really good. I mean, there's some great ones in my area and up around the Dale Hollow area who have been doing this since it come out and who know things that I only wish I knew about. But could you imagine the types of baits these guys and probably what they're ordering baits to do right now? I mean, that's how that's how that's why we have a chatterbait. It's why we have a preacher jig. I mean,
but I just feel like I feel like it's a chicken or the egg thing, because it's like when the glide baits were always around, but it took when Milliken won and all those people started winning it, then it became cool. And ICAST next year is like glide baits are the big thing. The jigging minnow is big right now because everyone's winning. Again, I think that's a chicken or the egg thing with the schedule. When you look at the St. John's, Okeechobee, the Powasuk River, guess what I'm hearing? A lot of chatterbait sales are going to go up because you ain't jigging a minnow in 50 feet of water in the Chesapeake Bay. You're not doing that. So I think, this is the lame, boring statistical answer, but next year, what will the sales be? Because if it's not the jigging minnow, it shows you it's whatever these boys win with is what will sell.
Yeah. I think you're right, but I think that, like you said a while ago about the 1%, at most of these tournaments at the local level, people aren't good enough with Livescope.
Yeah.
So they're still buying the product, or should be. I think that pros have an effect, but Berkeley or Pure Fishing, they hit a grand slam this year when, Jordan won that tournament on the frog and the rod's getting jerked out of his hand and all that sort of stuff. And I think you're right. If we have a tournament where somebody wins one on a Fritz side, then there's going to be a bunch of crankbaits bought. It's just, I don't know if we'll ever have one on a Fritz side again. But we talk about the minnows, and you brought up about the innovations. I'm not going to tell what my kid catches them on because he'd kill me. But he only caught one on a minnow last week, and he scoped every fish. So it's not just minnows. Look at Tyler Williams. Tyler Williams is a really good friend of mine. I filmed him every day at Smith Lake, and I assure you that he caught every fish except for one on a drop shot. I mean, on a jig. He caught one fish on a drop shot, rest of them on a jig. And you don't hear Tyler getting that criticism some of the other live scopers do, because us old school people go, he's setting the hook.
And Brian, this is something I've said on my show a bunch, that just American corporations have gotten lazy as hell. It's just like, let's just make a crankbait now for the 80th time in purple and gay rainbow, or let's just steal whatever Japan's doing. I mean, you want any company, it feels like right now, the past couple of years, it's Japan that's innovating anything and setting the trends. And when did that happen? When they stopped really creating cool products? I mean, have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough that I work with a couple of those companies, and I get to talk to them a lot. Duo being one of those companies who I love to work with. And I mean, they are constantly pushing that bar. And, I've worked with Strike King in the past, and I mean, look, I love a lot of their products, but I mean, their big innovation coming out was another minnow. I mean, what, come on.
What is it, like, be a 5 minutes?
I mean, you're a little behind the curve, bro. I mean, so
I went to Jordan's house 3 weeks ago. It may have been longer than that. I think it was before they went up north. And on the front deck he's got 2 boats in there, and on the front deck of one boat, there was thousands of dollars worth of stuff from Japan. And I thought, why are our American companies not knocking this stuff off? Because there's all these little things like, we need this, we need that. And, the Sakamata shed was here 10 years ago. Taku or somebody won a tournament on it. And even Taku said, I don't throw Takamata anymore. That's old school. And here it is.
Yeah.
We can't even get them.
No, can't even get them. Well, that's even like, I did a video on that BR head and that BR fish, and that kind of went big. that had actually been out forever. I mean, it's been out forever. It was a saltwater bait that they were using. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's me. I mean, look, I'm a network engineer. I'm a computer geek. I love my craft, right? I've always loved. I learned how to. I had a John boat with a little tiny eagle. My first bass boat had a flasher, and I've always just kind of fished out there deeper ever since I've been doing it. And I still get people all the time. I tell people all the time I'm the worst tournament angler on earth because I like to fiddle too much. And you can't do that in the tournament world. You've got to have a few things, be real good at it, and have it figured out. Me, I've always got 30 rods sitting on the deck. People are like, "You ain't got it figured out, do you, buddy? You got 30 rods on the deck." I'm like, "Well, I'm figuring other things out. That's what I like to do." That's what I like to. That's my enjoyment with it. I think that kind of, it's for me. It's just fun. And like I said, man, forward facing sonar has just to me the science about it. Gosh, man, it's so fun to just see, watch.
It is. It's incredible, and it's taught us a lot about fish that we just did not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see. I was with my son last week, and he was flipping stumps. I mean, he was scoping them, but he was flipping around. They were like 6 foot of water. And all of a sudden he said, "Oh my gosh, there's a giant." And it was just swimming out there roaming. No fit. No, we would have never caught that fish without Livescope. And there was 3 of them together. He throws out there and it's a 713. And I said, "Man," I said, "these stumps have got them." And he said, "It wasn't on a stump. It was just roaming."
Yeah.
And so, we've always thought those fish just go sit there by a stump all day. But when I used to mussel dive, I dove below Gunnersville Dam, but I would be in like 20 to 30 foot of water. And when you get out in the middle of the channel, 28, 30 foot deep, there's giant boulders, there's log jams, there's all this stuff. And I remember telling my daddy, "There's no way I can catch them because there's no way I can fish them." Back then, we didn't have the units to be able to know what you were throwing at. But those big 5 and 6 pounders would just sit down there behind a boulder. There may be 4 or 5. There may be 6 or 8 behind a log jam. And they just chilling. And every now and then, a darter minnow would come by and they'd eat it. But all they were doing was waiting till they wanted to get something to eat. And then they run up to a high spot or to the bank, or they wait for nighttime and they go eat something.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that happened, but I didn't know how to fish for them. Mm-hmm. And now forward facing sonar tells us, "Hey, all them big ones are out there and you got to go out there to find them." And we can do it now.
It's been really neat just this year, compared this year to the past 2 years. We're in a drought up here, and I've loved to fish these 2 extremely highlands reservoirs up on the mountains, up here on the Virginia side. And it's been crazy because we've been on those lakes, we've been in the fall transition now since, the end of August, really. And that's when it generally starts happening. Once the nights start getting colder, I mean, those shad and those bass, they are on the move. We followed schools for 5 miles over the course of about a month and a half last year. And it's blown my mind how the lack of oxygen, because these are not lakes that generate, they're just flood control lakes, how it's changed the movements of these bass this year compared to, standard rainfall and a little above average 2 years ago. It's crazy.
All right, let's change here up a little bit. We're gonna wrap this bad boy up, but I got one question for you, Slick. Last week you dropped a video and it was talking about sponsors leaving, and we've heard about anglers being disgruntled and some leaving as well. We want to know what's the future of bass fishing? I mean, what are we looking like going forward? Are we in a transition like we talked about earlier? like Thomas spoke of earlier, with the younger anglers coming in, some of the older anglers starting to move on. And I tell people I consider this just like NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR guys, Winston was it. And then once Winston hit left, there's been a flux of just sponsors. And it's, they're not, some are seeing a potential, some are not seeing a potential. And you guys all know FLW signed a big deal back in the day with Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, from Walmart's perspective, was like, if you want top shelf, you're going to wrap a boat. And if you want to be a sponsor, because that's how they end up getting all those different sponsors during the Walmart era. So, I mean, what are we looking like for the bass fishing in the future for the up and comers?
So this is going to be a long answer, but
this is going to be the last question, and then we're going to exit this bad boy.
Number one, we live in a bass bubble, and some people want to believe the numbers that bass throws out. Okay, and let me give you an example. At Murray, Bass said that 495,000 people watched on day 2. They said 580,000 people watched on day 3. However, the TV ratings say that 81,000 people watched. Okay. So they manipulate the numbers, because if I go to that, to Bass Live or to the Bass Track 10 different times in a day, they show that as 10 people. We live in a bass bubble. Us 4 people right here, we think bass fishing's bigger than it is. The problem that Bassmaster, MLF, MPFL, all of them have, Bassmaster has the mentality that when they lose a sponsor, well, we'll find another one. We don't. What we should have is the sponsors knocking at our door begging to get in, but that's not what it is. We have to go beg somebody else to come. Until we have gambling in fishing, it will never succeed the way it needs to succeed. There's a lot of things that go into having that. There is going to be something in the next couple of years that's going to change the face of fishing. But right now, look, we're taught from early on in high school, okay? The first ever tournament my son won in high school was 260 boats. He won a donated rod and a donated bag of baits.
Wow.
Okay? So it was only a $40 entry fee, but somebody got that 40 times 260. Yeah. Now we go on to college and we're taught that Angler of the Year is what we shoot for. Oh, so it's okay just to have barely enough money to go fishing and not make any money. Then we move on to the Opens or the Toyota Series. And when we go to the Opens, we're taught that we're going to have to spend $65,000 to make 30, but we need to go out and beg sponsors to pay just to have enough money to go fishing. Then we're going to go to the Elites, and we're basically paying more money to be the best in the world. And so we have this mentality that if I can go fish for a living, I don't need a bunch of money. I just need to be able to get by and be thankful I'm fishing for a living. And it's always been put your money up and go fish for it. And we talk about these non-endemic sponsors. We talk about all these sponsors. Look, Black Rifle Coffee, General Tire is a little different. General Tire was we'll get into that another time. They didn't leave because they weren't making money. It was a vindictive thing. However, however, these non-endemic sponsors, I use the number of there's 1 million people that watch tournament fishing. It's probably half that. Okay. So if we're an exception because we want to know what's going on at MLF, Bass, and MPFL. When I go to Texas to a bass fishing tournament, I am a rock star. Okay. I'm signing autographs, taking pictures. Everybody knows who I am. When I go down to Dolphin Island and I go saltwater fishing, not only did I not know who I am, they don't know who Jacob Wheeler is, Jordan Lee, KVD, any of those people. So 56 million people bought fishing license. But for some reason, we advertise to the 1 million that watches tournament fishing. We have to figure out a way to advertise to those other 55 million people. Because right now, tournament fishing and the organizations, the brands, they're only targeting the people that watch tournament fishing. And that's why the social media aspect plays so much now, because when I do a video, I'm talking to the 7 billion people that's on TikTok. And so these pros, when they have social media, they're talking to way more than just the guy that watches tournament fishing. Mm-hmm. But that's why people like Ben Milliken, before he was a pro, he made more money than 99% of the pros. Mm-hmm. He wasn't in tournament fishing, but we all think tournament fishing is this big thing and you need to be a pro. No, you don't. That's unfortunate, but you don't. And we don't treat our pros like professionals.
Yeah. Are they professionals right now with the way it's structured right now? I mean, we talked about we need gambling and fishing, but it already sounds like it's run like a casino.
It is. It's already gambling. You're right. You know, we're going to go put up 5,000 to win 100,000. You know, and it's just the way it's been structured. We always think about doing the same thing, and that's got to change. It's got to be a team aspect. We got to treat it like other sports, and like I said, that's coming down the road.
Guys, Slick Johnson, appreciate you coming on the show, brother. Really, really appreciate that. Love to have you back on. You're welcome anytime. Great conversation. Guys, always head on over, check out Bass Geeks channel. Videos, I think 4 or 5 videos every week.
We do 3 long plays and 7 shorts.
All right. And as always, man, Fishing the DMV. Make sure you guys hit the follow, subscribe to the Patreon. I mean, it's going to go help. Like I said, we've talked about it in the past. It's going to be fishing some boat docks, some ramps, stocking some bass.
We're going to be trying to get F1s in the tidal Potomac River so we can make that bad boy look like the James. I got permission from the Maryland DWR. We're going to try to get that to happen here, hopefully.
Slick, anybody you want to promote, talk about, or think, or whatever you like to do real quick before we jump off here?
Yeah, I just, I got Powerhouse lithiums, FX rods, and I'm going to be talking about the Ultimate Angler this week. The Ultimate Angler is the tournament that's qualifying tournament that anybody that fishes Elite Series, BFLs, all the way up, college guys can qualify to fish for $500,000. The state of Alabama is sponsoring it. I'm going to be talking about that this week. It's going to be the biggest tournament we've ever had, besides back in the Walmart days. But it'd be a $500,000 prize for first place.
Wow.
And go watch go look at the Field and Stream article on cheating. I'll be talking more about that in the next couple of days.
All right. You heard it right here. Appreciate you being on, guys. Have a great week, everyone. And we'll be back next week with another great episode of Basscast Radio.
Hey,